Steve Jobs created the invention, and then he said, you need the invention. In other words, the mastery, the miracle, the success in Apple, and specifically with the iPod, was not in providing a tool that people said they needed. It was not in the tool itself. It was providing the idea and cultivating the idea in the consumer.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
I think we can all agree that Steve Jobs was a bit of a loon. He was a bit of a wacko. When I don't know, how many of you have read his biography or know much about him? Right, the guy was eccentric, to say the least. However, I think there are lessons that can be learned from Steve Jobs for appraisers currently. And I want to explore that today. I want to pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by three great companies, OREP being one of them. OREP is the E&O company that I use. Benefits galore. Check them out. Go to orep.org. That's OREP.org. Sponsored by Datamaster. Datamasterusa.com is where you go to save 30 to 60 minutes per report. No, I didn't stutter. 30 to 60 minutes per report, folks. Datamasterusa.com. Finally, a la mode will also save you time, energy, and increase the quality of your reports. Go to alamode.com or pick up the phone, folks. Yeah, the good old-fashioned phone. And call them at 800-ALA-MODE. Well, folks, I'm not a huge fan of Steve Jobs. I think that he was a bit on the crazy side. I am interested in Steve Jobs. In fact, if you recently attended a workshop that I put on called Go Remodel Your Appraisal Business, you will find that Steve Jobs was one of the individuals that I listed on a list of my mentors. Okay, these are people both living and dead that I have learned lessons from. Now, I want to make it very clear. There are many people on that list that you would look at and go, really, Dustin? That you would call that person a mentor? Again, the definition is not whether I liked the person. The definition is not whether I agreed with the person. The definition was whether I've learned lessons from, both good and bad. Some of those mentors on there I looked at and said, yeah, never going to do that, right? Steve Jobs doesn't necessarily fit into that category, although some of the things that he did, and especially his private life, was very interesting to me. And I think that probably fed in, I'm guessing, to why he was so successful, because he was very unconventional. I do believe that is one of the recipes, or rather the ingredients rather, for the recipe for success, is that you have to be a little non-conventional, to say the least. Okay, you need to be able to think outside the box, and I think he did that in both his private life and his business life. Okay, and there's a lot of things that Steve Jobs did that I think was cutthroat, that was mean, that was dishonest. Read the book, right? But there are some interesting things that happened throughout Steve Jobs' life that made him successful. One of those lessons, I think, can teach appraisers today. And it has to do with this idea of the iPod. Now, let's talk about the iPod. If you don't know the history there, it's really important to this episode, and it's really important, I think, to appraisers' future, that you understand the story. And by the way, I don't have anything in front of me on the screen. I'm not reading from the history of the iPod. This is all from Dustin Harris's memory. I don't say that to brag, because I say that as an excuse, because I'm going to get it wrong. It's been a long time since I read the book. It's been a long time since I heard these stories. But there's one story about the iPod that frankly didn't mean that much to me when I first heard it. I thought it was interesting. But as we see changes happening, and there are changes happening in the appraisal world, we talked about them last week. By the way, if you've not listened to last week's episode, pause now. Okay, we're not quite 4 minutes into today's episode. Pause now, go back, listen to that episode, and then pick it up here. Okay, not that you have to in order to get today's episode, but it would be helpful to establish a bit of a foundation. I alluded last week to this episode this week. Okay, really important to lay the foundation, I think. Okay. Last week's episode was about the changes in the future that are happening with the appraisal world, specifically with the lender residential AMC person. Okay, there's a lot of change. I don't think it's any surprise. There's a lot of changes happening. Okay, and by the way, this is how I'm gonna lay this out. I'm gonna tell the story about Steve Jobs up front. Then we're gonna go to a break, a sponsorship break, and then when we come back, I'm going to bring it full circle. At least I'm going to attempt to. That's my goal today. Because I think that this story, even though it didn't really resonate hugely with me before, I love this about mentors. I love this about stories. I love this about history. A lot of times I will read something, hear something, think something, and I will just kind of compartmentalize it and put it in my brain, right? And I'll say, interesting, not really useful to me right now, but I'm going to put it over here in this file cabinet, and maybe someday I'll revisit it. This story is one of those things. At the time, it was interesting. It was enough that I compartmentalized it. It was enough. There was enough interest for me that I put it in that little file cabinet. I thought, that could be useful someday. Well, now today I find it very useful because now today I find that this story, and by the way, this story is not necessarily specific to Steve Jobs. This story is not necessarily unique to him. Many, many people have utilized this same principle that is going to be taught in this story. But I think it's a great way to teach a principle that many appraisers I don't think see right now. It has to do with pie, has to do with pieces of that pie. It has to do with change and innovation. It has to do with expansion and creativity and new things. Okay, here's the story. My understanding and my memory of the iPod was that Steve Jobs created the iPod not because there was a demand for an iPod. Let me repeat that. It's important to the story. Steve Jobs did not have a bunch of customers coming to him and say, Steve, please create an iPod. I would buy one today if there was one. They talked just like that, by the way. Actually, they didn't because there was nobody like that. That's the whole point of the story. There was nobody clamoring at Steve Jobs' door, knocking on Apple's corporate headquarters and saying, we need an iPod. In fact, one step further, forget the name iPod. Nobody was coming to Steve Jobs and saying, we need 1,000 songs in our pocket. And we need it now. And our wallets are open. And we would buy not just one, but two. We need this. Folks, that's the way most businesses work. And by the way, that's a very successful business plan, by the way. Okay? I said by the way twice because that's important. Napoleon Hill taught, and I'm paraphrasing, that if you want to make money, you find what people want and you provide it. Okay? Whether it be a product or a service. If you want to be successful and run a successful company, go out and discover what people need and what people want and create it and provide it. And guess what? They will open up their wallets to do so. Very simple example. When I was 12 years old, I got a job mowing lawns. Okay? Lawns grow, even in Idaho. The grass grows. People don't like tall grass for obvious reasons. They want well-manicured lawns. People don't like to do that service themselves. It's a pain. We're lazy. We have better things to do with our time. So we hired out to 12-year-old kids. A business is born. There's a need for a service. There's a 12-year-old boy willing to fill that need. The price is right, and a business is born. When I was 12, I started learning business ideas. I started learning principles of success. And that was the first one. Find a need, provide the answer. Now, that was not the iPod. The iPod took a completely different approach. the iPod was not invented, and there was no need, or at least any prominent and specific need, for 1,000 songs in your pocket. Nobody was clamoring and saying, I need 1,000 songs in my pocket, and Steve Jobs went, that's interesting. Maybe I should provide that product. No, Steve Jobs went out and created a product, or at least an idea, and then started selling the idea. You see how that's opposite of what the lawn mowing business analogy was? People need their lawn mowed, you provide the service. Nobody needs 1,000 songs in their pocket. At least they don't know that they do. They don't think that they do. So you provide the service for them. Steve Jobs created the invention, and then he said, you need the invention. In other words, the mastery, the miracle, the success in Apple, and specifically with the iPod, was not in providing a tool that people said they needed. It was not in the tool itself. It was providing the idea and cultivating the idea in the consumer. Brilliant. You create a product that did not exist, and furthermore, you create a need that did not exist. You create an idea that did not exist previously. The idea of 1,000 songs in your pocket. Creating the device, forgive me, Steve, for this, because you'd slap me if you were still alive and you were standing here, but is easy, right? The device itself is easy. The hard part was selling the idea. The hard part was trying to convince millions of consumers that they needed 1,000 songs in their pocket, because they probably heard that the first time and went, I need what? Why? What? Folks, there are so many things out there that are just like this. I recently read a story about a young entrepreneur, speaking of mowing lawns, okay, that's a need people have. Well, there are also needs out there that people don't really think they need until they're told that they need them. Let me give you an example. Young kid I recently heard about created a business, and the business was, and I know, listeners, you live in different areas, and different areas have different things, but I think we're all familiar with the big, tall garbage cans that we pull out to the street, right? And the big arm comes down on the truck, lifts it up, dumps it, and puts it back down, and you roll it back to your house. That's the way they do it in my neighborhood. There's some neighborhoods around me that don't have that service. They still take their can that they get from Home Depot or Lowe's out. But I think most of the country at this point has moved to these, I don't know how big they are, 100-gallon cans that we roll out to the street, right? Well, I recently read a story about a young entrepreneur of 12, 13 years old who went around his neighborhood with a power washer, and for a fee, I don't remember what it was, $25, whatever, would power wash the inside and outside of their trash can. Not really something I thought about needing, but now that you mention it, I really could use a nice, clean, fresh trash can. In other words, he created a business not based on people coming to him and saying, we really need our trash can cleaned up. Could you do that for us? Yeah, I guess I could do that, and I could make some money at the same time. He created the business. He created the service. He created the product. And then he went around, and as he promoted it to people, they all of a sudden thought, certainly not something I was thinking of 10 minutes ago, but now that you mention it, here's $25. Knock yourself out. Love these ideas. Love these innovations. I also love a la mode software. A la mode, of course, is the software. Do you love these transitions? I do. I love the software that I've been using for over 20 years. And the reason I've been using it for over 20 years is it is the bomb diddly. Now, that is an official technical term that basically means it does it all. Everything I need done can happen in a la mode. Folks, the tools that they provide, and you just have to experience it to understand it. The time-saving tools are enormous. The quality on my reports increases because I use a la mode software. Folks, if you are not convinced that a la mode is the best choice for you, pick up the phone and call them. 800 a la mode. A salesperson will answer the phone. and a salesperson will know the software you're using, and they will be able to help answer any questions that you have as to why a la mode is different. alamode.com or 800-ALA-MODE. Speaking of getting more done, how about DataMaster? DataMaster allows me to save 30 to 60 minutes per report. Let's just round it off at 45, okay? I do a lot of reports in a month. My firm does a great deal of volume, okay? When I add up 45 minutes per report, okay, we're talking a lot of time. We're talking hours and hours and hours of time that's saved over the period of a month. What if you could save 30 to 60 hours per month? Think about that for a second. DataMaster can do that for you. It really can. That's not an exaggeration. Why? Because it does stuff for you that you would have to do on your own. It's absolutely amazing. Check it out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Again, it's datamasterusa.com. Finally, we are sponsored today by OREP Insurance. I just got done taking 2 classes. Actually, that's not true. 1 class. I signed up for 2 classes. I haven't taken the other one yet. I will soon. From OREP. And guess how much I paid as an OREP member? These are for CE classes, by the way, not just education, but I'm actually getting credit from my state boards. Big fat zero, folks. That's right. I paid $0 for 14 hours of CE. Why? Because I'm a member of OREP. You should be a member of OREP as well. Go to orep.org. That's OREP.org. All right. We're back, folks. We're talking today a little bit about Steve Jobs and how this principle of creating a need, okay? Creating a product that doesn't exist before. Now, why am I telling this story, Dustin? Glad you asked. I'm telling this story because I hear a lot of people on the internet forums saying some form of this phrase. There's only a finite amount of appraisal business out there. So in other words, I work a city, okay? I work, Salt Lake City, Utah. There's only a finite number of appraisals in Salt Lake City. And there's a finite number of appraisers. And it doesn't matter how hard I work, there's still going to be a finite amount of appraisal services out there. And I just can't compete. I just can't keep up. Folks, let me first say this. Let me back up, okay? Before I wax philosophical, let me show some empathy here. I understand and I get that mindset. I really do. I do. I understand that mindset. I find myself in that mindset a lot, okay? There's a certain amount of pie, and if I take one piece and there's 5 other appraisers that take one piece, the pie's gone. Now, let me go back to the story at hand, okay? Nobody was saying that I need 1,000 songs in my pocket. Please create the device that can do that. Or at least if there was somebody, it was very few, right? Maybe the idea came from a consumer. I don't know. But there were millions of people clamoring for that device. And then Steve Jobs had to make it. He made the device, and then the hard part was to convince people that they needed it. Is there a lesson in today's world when it comes to appraisal? Again, last week we talked about the future of appraising, and it's changing, okay? And a lot of you have decided that desktop work is not for you. Maybe you've tried it. Maybe you said, okay, Dustin, fine. And you tried it. Maybe you gave it the old 10-house challenge, right? Remember that years ago? I gave the old, you can look it up on my blog, okay? Look up the 10-house challenge on the appraisercoach.com. And it had to do with people who tried the laser measure or the pocket PC or the phone, smartphone or tablet. And my encouragement was that you don't give up after 1 or 2 or 3, okay? That you really give it the old college try. Give it at least 10. And at that point, you won't be proficient, but you will at least say, okay, I can see why people use a disto. I still need to perfect it. I still need to get better. I'm still not as fast as I am with my roller, but I at least see why people are doing this, and I do see that it can in the future be beneficial. That's the 10-house challenge, right? So maybe you on desktops, you've given it the old 10 house challenge or the 10 appraisal challenge. And you said, I'm not going to give up after 1. I realize it takes some time to learn this stuff. And I'm not going to give up after 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I'm going to give it 10. And if I can't make any money after 10, well, screw it. I can't make any money. And that's the future of appraisal. And so I'm going to go eat worms. Well, okay. Maybe this episode isn't for you, but I think it is, if you'll open up your mind for just a second. What can Steve Jobs teach appraisers today? What about innovation? What about creation of a product? Remember, there was no neighbor screaming to have their garbage can cleaned out when the 12-year-old knocked on their door. He created a mindset, an idea that only took a couple seconds for them to say, yeah, you know what? Come to think of it, that garbage can does smell, and I'm sick of it. Yeah, here's $25. Here's my hose. Knock yourself out. A product that did not exist, a service that did not exist, all of a sudden existed because the salesman said they needed it. Now, there are many, many, many stories that I could tell, but I think you get it. The principle is very simple. It's the difference between providing a service that people are asking for and creating a service that they're not. So yes, are there a finite amount of divorces out there? Yeah. I would not recommend that you run around trying to get spouses upset at each other so that they will get divorced so that you'll get a $500 appraisal. Probably not the best business model. I certainly would not encourage you to go around killing people so that you can do their estate work. I can't believe I just said that on a public microphone. There's a finite number of appraisals in certain aspects, yes. But folks, what about creation? What about expansion? What about providing a service that doesn't currently exist, or at least it doesn't exist in your mindset? Well, Dustin, what are you talking about? What is this magical product that you're talking about? Well, I don't know. It's not created yet. That's up to you. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples to think about. These are things that I've done in my own business. Okay? Now, maybe these aren't new to you, but I think they fit the principle. For example, years ago, I created a product and a service that didn't really have a need. There were not customers coming to me, specifically flippers, okay, house flippers, and coming to me and saying, gee, Dustin, I really would like a product where you could appraise the house as is, tell me a general cost to cure, and then appraise the house subject to completion. Okay? Notice there were 2 values in there, and then there was a cost in there as well. I wasn't having anybody knock on my door and say, hey, Dustin, I'm a house flipper, and I've got a great product that I need you to give me. No, I knew some house flippers. I thought through the process. I was a house flipper. I wouldn't call myself a flipper, but I did a couple of investment properties. And I did this for myself. The house is worth X amount. It's going to cost me X amount to fix it up, and it's going to be worth X amount when I fix it up. I was doing that internally. Why wouldn't anybody else, a renovation, a flipper, an individual who takes and fixes up houses and resells them, why wouldn't they want that product as well? So guess what? I created the product. The difference was nobody came to me and asked me for the product. I created the product, and then I went to house flippers and said, hey, you need this product. And guess what? We've made a lot of money over the years with that product. We don't currently. There's not a lot of flipping going on in my area. But at times there has been, and now I've got the product. And yes, I charge accordingly for it. We're talking 2 values. We're talking two scope of works here. Okay. There's some consultation that goes on to it as well. And we charge accordingly. And we make a pretty good living on that, not a living, a pretty good fee, if you will, on that particular product. An example of a product that didn't exist really, and maybe some of you are saying, well, Dustin, I've been doing that for years. Okay. In my area, that didn't exist. I created the product, But more importantly, I sold the product to people that didn't even know they needed the product. Guess what? The pie just got bigger. Again, I am not a fan of this idea that there's a finite amount of pie pieces, and if you take one and everybody else takes one, the pie is gone. Nay, nay. Look at it differently. The pie expands. I'll give you another example. Right now, Zillow is all the rage, right? Zillow this, Zillow that, and Zillow's crap, and garbage in and garbage out. And we go to these houses and people say, well, my Zillow's estimate is, okay, whatever, right? Is there an opportunity at that point to educate the homeowner? Yeah, I'm there for a mortgage transaction, absolutely. But is there an opportunity there for you to upsell to something else? Maybe a consultation, maybe some education, maybe an opportunity to come back to the house and teach them how they can increase the value of their home. You've already walked through the home. You've already made lots of notes and taken lots of pictures. Could you give them some advice? And not just free advice, but paid for advice in a consultation? Or going back to the Zillow thing, is there an opportunity to create a desktop product? Yep, I said the word. Private desktop product, a restricted report, if you will, where you are showing the homeowner why Zillow is not reliable, but you as a valuation professional for a fee can give them a better product. Who doesn't want to know the value of their home? Everybody does. It's so easy. Couple mouse clicks and they're on Zillow, right? But can you teach them, educate them, yea, even market to them a new product? And folks, I've just scratched the surface because this pie is as big as you want to make it. And that's kind of the point today. Steve Jobs taught us a great lesson. He taught us that there was not a finite number of pieces of pie. That pie can expand because you create the need. You create the service that people don't even know they want. So is the future of appraisal bright? It is for me. It is for my clients. It is for many, many. I love the opportunities that are before us. If you think that I am an AMC appraiser and if AMCs go to desktops, I'm done, folks, please expand. Please reach out. Please move forward with some different new ideas. Because the pie is not finite. There are not a certain amount of appraisals out there. You can create a much, much bigger playing field. And guess what? You're going to be the leader on that field because you're the one creating it. Thank you for joining me today, folks. I would love to be able to help you out, and I do so every month on the Appraiser Academy. This is a topic that we've talked about actually a couple of times on the Appraiser Academy already. You're getting this secondhand, folks. You could have learned this months ago. Join me, won't you? The Appraiser Academy can be found at theappraisercoach.com. One more time, it's theappraisercoach.com.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Steve Jobs did not have a bunch of customers coming to him and say, Steve, please create an iPod. I would buy one today if there was one. They talked just like that, by the way. Actually, they didn't because there was nobody like